On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're discussing the Lightning's 5-2 win at home against the Nashville Predators, Braydon Point's great night, and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I just want to thank all of you for making us your first listen of the day. And if you're watching us on YouTube, I want to thank you for making us your first watch of the day. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Let us know how you're feeling today. Well, I'm feeling great. We're recording this not too long after the Lightning took care of business at home. 5-2 win against the Nashville Predators, who were coming into this game pretty much on a similar kind of pace as what we saw from the Lightning in their last 10 as well. So two teams that were, at least on paper, in their last 10 games, looking similarly matched coming into this one. But as soon as the first puck was dropped and the whistle blew, it was pretty much the Lightning from then on. I mean, this was, we've spoken about it before on previous seasons, actually, how the Lightning have, over the last couple of seasons, maybe 3, 4, 5 seasons, historically are one of the faster teams in the National Hockey League. And so at this point, over the years, as the years have passed, much of the NHL has caught on and has adapted their games, their style to somewhat that similar of what the Lightning have. Obviously, not all could replicate it because talent could only go on so many teams. But you would figure at this point that, to the diehard Lightning fans, casual Lightning fans, even me, who has watched every single Lightning game over the last 3-4 years and beyond, is we would kind of be like, or kind of relax in terms of this team coming out of the gates busting their butts on the ice. But man, was those first 3 minutes of the first period a fast-paced flat. I can't even say it. I'm just in sort of pretty much awe of how the opening minutes of this game were and how fast this was. And all credit to Nashville. It could have gotten ugly real quick from them, considering how fast out of the gates Tampa was skating. And even before the first puck was dropped, I mean, if you were listening to the broadcast, and I was all over the place in this. I was listening to, I had the volume on the television with the broadcast, and then at one point turned off the audio, put on the radio in the background. So I was watching the game and listening to Dave Mishkin and Phil Esposito in the background, and then jumping back with Dave Randorf and Brian Engblom. And everyone stressed that John Cooper said to his players before this game and yesterday as well, when he spoke to the media, they got to come out, they got to skate fast, they got to do what they got to do early on. And this is something that we've spoken about. I feel like, if you're getting tired of me saying the Lightning need to get off to a good start, well, tough. You know what? That is pretty much has been the song that we have sang over the last couple of seasons with this team, because we know it works. We know what Tampa Bay is capable of, and we saw it in this game. This team, this was almost equivalent. This was almost the Mona Lisa game. And at some point during the season, I will declare one game that the Lightning play to be the Mona Lisa game. And what I mean by that is a game that is the epitome of a masterpiece. And Tampa was pretty close. There was a couple of moments there where you kind of saw it in the second period, especially when Carrier scored that game-tying goal. You saw it where Nashville was starting to come back, and that was expected. I spoke about it on the previous episode where I'd expect, these two teams to go at it for the first period, very close game. And then you start to see Tampa, as the game goes on, showing that experience, showing that veteran leadership, start to pull away. I mean, we saw that in the third period, scoring 3 unanswered goals, pretty much sealing the deal from then on there. But the first 3 to 5 minutes of this game was wild. I am, like I almost was starting to allude to in the beginning of the show, was that you got to give credit to Nashville. The way they were able to keep their heads on their shoulders and kind of keep the Lightning at bay. And that's really what it was to start the game. Was you could tell from the first couple of minutes, and then even the point goal. I mean, the chip to Point down the middle was just chef's kiss. I mean, it couldn't get any much more perfect than that. That is a play that the Lightning go to now and then. We see it obviously not work out more times than it does. But when it does, it is a work of art. And you saw it right there. And I wish that the Lightning could pull that card out of their sleeve on a nightly basis. Obviously, they're not going to do that because teams are looking for that. But they caught Nashville in a weird position going down the other way. Cole saw a point, and it was a perfect chip where only he could get to it on the rush. And once, as we all know, once Braydon Point gets a head full of steam down the ice, down the middle, I mean, chances are your goaltender is going to have to make a highlight reel save to stop him, and not even UC Saros, who I've spoken about on this show before. I believe he's one of the top goaltenders in the league. I mean, we made a top goaltender look, I wouldn't say like a chump. That's a little harsh. It wasn't all Saros in this game. It was just Nashville in general, not being able to keep up with the pace that the Lightning were setting forward. And really, the opening minutes proved that. Nashville did have their moments, like I said. They were able to settle it down after the Perry goal. They got one back from the Jankowski goal, and which was shorthanded, which never ideal. Never ideal to give up. Excuse me, never ideal to give up a goal like that. But overall, I mean, it couldn't get much better than what you saw in the first period from this Lightning team in terms of overall energy. Even if you're down, this team, I fully believe, knock on wood, if this team is riddled with injuries, you come out of the gates playing like that, I mean, you could beat any team on a nightly basis. And when the Lightning play like that, I believe that they're one of the best teams in the league. But and that point goal exemplifies where they were at tonight in that win. And if you have a friend that you're trying to get into hockey, or if you know someone that's trying to get into hockey and you need to show them something exciting to hook them in, you show them the Braydon Point goal. That was just like I said, a work of art, great play, exemplified the level at which the Tampa Bay Lightning were at tonight, in a very good win that really, I mean, with the slate of games that are coming up after the tough loss the other night against Detroit, a game that I really wish the Lightning could have gotten back. Winning by this deficit, winning by this big of a margin with division rival Florida Panthers, that kind of, believe it or not, I think teams look at margin of victory in their opponents' previous games, and especially where their opponents are at, and they look at that and they take that seriously. That's kind of a gauge as to where their team is, because it's not only on, like I said, numbers don't tell the whole story. They look at that and they're probably thinking, okay, Tampa's going to be coming in with huge amount of confidence. And we didn't even get into the fact that Brian Elliott played tonight, which we'll get into in the second segment. But first impressions from this game, phenomenal win, great performance all around. Another game in which every player on this team, whether or not they got into the assist column, was involved on every play. You saw everybody. It wasn't just one handful of players that were getting, the shout outs on the broadcast or even making plays. I mean, the list goes on. Perbix had a phenomenal night once again. I mean, this guy is probably one of the biggest surprises in the NHL right now. I think I don't think enough people are talking about Nathan Perbix. So we'll talk about him later on. But great performance tonight. We'll continue to speak about it in the second segment. Brian Elliott, we got to talk about him because he is, in my opinion, one of the best backup goaltenders in the National Hockey League right now. We talk about Braydon Point and everybody else who continues the role. But first, I'm going to remind you that today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net. Now, BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. They're always fastest and easiest way to get your sports betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And I just want to remind everybody and thank everyone for making us your first listen once again. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. We are available wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. Follow us on our social media pages as well as on LO_Lightning on Twitter and LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. Give me a follow on Twitter at DankyDank, DENKYD8. Love hearing from all of you. I was talking to a few of you during the game tonight. Love the feedback. Keep it up. Let's talk Lightning hockey. What this team is playing phenomenal right now. Win or lose. I said on a couple episodes ago, and we were talking about it in the comments as well. I don't know if it was last episode per se. And if you haven't already, the comments on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below. Hit that thumbs up button. And most importantly, again, subscribe, because as soon as the newest episode drops, you're notified. Bam, you're ready to roll. You're ready to see my beautiful face. Some of you prefer my voice. To each their own. Watch and listen at the same time, like I did tonight with the radio on and the game on TV. But lot of A pluses to go around, really. I mean, this was as good as it gets. And I just realized I called Perbix Nathan instead of Nick. That's just pure excitement. I mean, like I said, win or lose lately for this Lightning team, there's always something positive. There's always, and we haven't really seen this in past seasons, at least since we've been doing this show. It's one thing where the Lightning, they win a game, we see a ton of momentum, a ton of positive things to take from that. And then they go and lose a game, and it's just like all the air in the room has been sucked out. We're not seeing that now. We saw that a little bit in the month of October, early November. Then I had my self-inflicted intervention by you, the listeners. If you're new to the show, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go back to last week's episode. I believe it was last Wednesday or so. I went off the rails. I sounded like a man possessed. The Lightning lost. I forgot who they even played. And I was just all over the place. And a handful of listeners, probably even more, were like, man, take a step back. Take it. And I did. I took a step back. And this team is just, with every win, even loss, they are improving. They are. And this is a team that I'm sure the rest of the Atlantic Division is looking at Tampa kind of nervous as to when they're going to take it to the next level, because, the Lightning, as good as they've been this year, now their record stands at 16-9-1 at the time of this recording, 9-4-1 at home, 7-5 on the road, and 7-3 in their last 10. So, as impressive as that is, we all know, especially those of us who have been watching this team for a very, very long time, that this team has another gear that they could get up to. And we're seeing it in the individual performances lately. Uh, Nick Pervix, you don't see it so much on the stats. You see it on the ice. I mean, a guy who is in his rookie season, 24 years old, showing the maturity and the know-withal of someone that has been in the league for 5+ years. And man, has he been a godsend. He has really been, I think, a blessing for this team. There was a ton of anxiousness surrounding this defensive core coming into the regular season, with the absences of Jan Ruda, with him leaving in free agency, with Ryan McDonough being traded away due to salary cap restrictions. A necessary trade, which was, by the way, was very nice to see that montage of him tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to play tonight. Suffered an injury, getting hit in the face by a puck. So, I mean, no surprise there. I mean, Mack Truck is jumping in front of pucks. He's made a living off that. We've won 2 Stanley Cups because of that performance. Little bittersweet to see him back, but you know what? That's just the nature of the business. But listen, with every player leaving, a new player comes in and shows what they got. And Nick Pervix has been absolutely incredible in the time that he has been able to be given the chance to play at the highest level in the game of hockey. So, kudos to him. And I'm very curious as to, we spoke on the last episode, John Cooper loves to play with the lines. He has his set starting lineups that he kind of keeps at from game to game. But as we all know, throughout the course of a game, and with the occurrence of injuries throughout the course of a season, we could be sitting here at some point in the season talking about Nick Pervix being potentially, I know this might sound blasphemous. Maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Like I said, down the line, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, down the line, Nick Pervix possibly being in a top 4 pairing. I know that sounds crazy. But he's playing that good. And maybe that might expose him to some weaknesses down the road. I mean, he is on the top line with Victor Hedman right now, which is great. But I mean, I could see that eventually changing. I could see maybe Cooper putting Chernak on that, especially if Perbix is susceptible to certain weaknesses. But what I am saying is that I'm talking about him being that anchor guy on the other side of Hedman. What we saw with Ryan McDonough and Chernak, what we saw with Ruda here, what we saw with Bogosian, those kind of pairings where Perbix is the number 1 guy. That's his spot. That he is that anchor defenseman that is always going to be there. Obviously, Coop's playing the hot hand right now, so he is on the first line, which is great. But can he sustain this? Is this a hot streak that is eventually going to come to an end, or is this something that is 100% permanent? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm curious what everyone else thinks. It's one thing for us to get a little ahead of ourselves and be all up in the Perbix bandwagon, which is we should. I mean, the guy's playing phenomenal hockey. But for how long? Is this sustainable? I think it's sustainable. I think, what he is doing, he's not being asked to score goals. He's just doing the small things. And like I've said on this show, sometimes the small things are all you need to help your team win games. And he's doing that. So stepping gears a little bit, sidestepping gears for a little bit real quick. Another play I want to mention real quick, because he has just been phenomenal. I mean, he's really starting to get hot. I always say if he could get hot, then we could definitely, that will lead to the Lightning having a more dynamic attack. And that is Braydon Point. Another goal tonight in this one. And really two goals actually tonight, excuse me. And Braydon Point, I mean, he's just one of those guys that we talk about where it just seems like he's always on the cusp. He's always on the cusp of going on some sort of torrid streak, and then, unfortunately, it's maybe an injury that holds him back, or something. It's usually just an injury, really. But I have to say, I mean, when Braydon Point is playing like this, and you could see it in the way he's skating, he is skating with such confidence to his game right now. Because these guys, let's face it, there is a lot of mental aspect that comes into these performances. Now, he didn't score in the last game uh, against Toronto. He didn't score against Philly. Uh, he had 2 goals against Buffalo, but um, if he could string along, so that's 2 straight games with points/goals. If we could get 3-4 games out of him where he gets a little streak together. Now, I'm not talking. I don't expect Braydon Point to get to Mitch Marner level of point streak. I think Mitch Marner's at 21 right now. But listen, when Braydon Point is playing like this, and he's really, like I said, he's skating with confidence. And when a guy like that who skates down the ice like he has a jetpack on his back, um, that is going to help this team immensely. And you saw it tonight against the Nashville Predators. Um, even though the Predators gave them a fight, they scored that game-tying goal in the second and then went into the third tied. It never seemed like this team was kind of worried or anxious or really lost momentum. The Lightning pretty much had this game in hand, and it was because of players like Braydon Point, like Nick Perbix, and then towards the end of the game, Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel, who we didn't even get into. Brandon Hagel, I've spoken about how I really like how he is really acclimated. We're starting to see the Brandon Hagel this year that we really would have hoped to have seen last year. Like I said on past episodes, no one could, not many people could come in, get traded at the deadline, and immediately have an impact on their team like Nick Paul did. And yeah, it was unfair to assume that Brandon Hagel could have, and that's why I was so critical of Brandon Hagel. But he has really come along, picked up his 8th goal this season tonight. Nick Paul continues to shine, 12 goals on the season now. Nick Paul's another one, just like Brandon Hagel, a little bigger, but Nick Paul, I mean, he just another one who just is so good at creating space, creating plays for himself, putting him in a situation for him to get the puck where he gets a lot of low slot chances. And he has just very good hands to where he could skate himself right around a goaltender and make him miss and put one in the back of the net. And that's what you love to see. Like I said, in these games when you're scoring 3, 4, 5 goals, when you're getting contributions from your entire team, that makes you dangerous. And you combine that with the confidence that this team exhibited tonight, going forward and for the rest of the month, the rest of the year, I am very high on Tampa Bay carrying this momentum well into 2023. So wrapping things up, so the Lightning do, like I said, they have a ton of confidence. They're riding high right now, as they should be. They've been playing fantastic hockey over pretty much the month, and it's just very tough right now to gauge that, and I'm sure it's frustrating for some Lightning fans because it's, you're listening to this or you're watching this on YouTube and you're saying, well, they're playing great hockey, but it seems like we're not making any ground towards Toronto and Boston. But I mean, you got if you look at what Toronto and Boston's been doing in the last 10, I mean, you really can't much do better than that other than being undefeated, which obviously the Lightning aren't. Uh, and put that in perspective, their last 10s all compared. Boston's 8-1-1. Toronto is 8-0-2, and Tampa is 7-3. So that's the unfortunate point we're at in this season. For, as good as Tampa's playing, Boston and Toronto are just on another level right now. And all we could really ask of this Lightning team is to continue to grind, continue to find ways to win, because the way this team is playing, this is going to be the most sustainable way for this team to win in the long term, going down the stretch into those dog days of March, those dog days of April, where most playoff teams, some playoff teams, the Lightning were a little bit practically limp towards the playoffs. And right now, not getting too ahead of ourselves because we are in December, the way the Lightning are playing right now, this is playoff hockey. I always talk on this show that the little ways of winning games are going to be the most sustainable. And if we've seen anything from these last 3 years that have resulted in 2 straight Stanley Cup wins and 3 straight Stanley Cup final appearances, is that the little things go a far way. And when you got everybody rolling on all cylinders from the first line to the fourth, and the fourth line for Tampa, their offensive production hasn't exactly been ideal, but we don't need that fourth line to go out there and score points. We need them to stop players, stop other teams, stop other, go out there and be that grinder line. Like a friend of mine from back in the day, from my NHL days, Brian Sosa, who is a Lightning fan, who always used to say, be that sandpaper. That is what we need that fourth line to be. But if the Lightning lines, the top, the top's 9 can go out there and play the way they're playing, this Lightning team, I think in the long run, like I said, I'm very optimistic that they will outlive the other performances that we are seeing out of Boston and Toronto, and potentially down the road, whether it be towards the end of the month, because you look at the rest of the schedule, not too shabby of a schedule. You have the some of the big tough games, some of the question mark games against Seattle, Toronto, and Detroit back to back there, second to last week of December. And then you also got Buffalo later that week. But really, other than that, you have a potential to really come out and come out of the month of December losing 3 games. And if you could keep your record to somewhat of that, to 3-4 lost months, whether it be at the end of January, beginning of February, Lightning will be in first place. If not, they will be pretty damn close to Boston. So for any Lightning fans out there that are slightly worried about where Tampa might end up in the standings, and think that maybe their effort or their recent performance is all for nothing, think twice. Look again. Tampa's in a great position right now going into one of the most important parts of the season, because like I've said, this Lightning team, or not just this Lightning team, hockey teams going into December, Christmas time, New Year's time, what you're seeing there, barring some catastrophic injury to one of your star players, or multiple catastrophic injuries, or a trade, what you see is what you get. And what you're getting out of the Lightning is sustainable playoff level hockey. And we'll see if they could carry that over into their afternoon game against Florida. Join us tomorrow as we will be previewing that game against the division rivals. Always look forward to playing Florida Panthers. I'm sure if we don't get one out by Monday for a recap, crossover, because I would love to get you know how much we enjoy doing our crossovers with the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, Armando Velez. I'm sure at some point we'll be getting a crossover together, just kind of discussing that. So keep an eye out for that. But we will be definitely getting a preview out tomorrow, Friday morning. So keep that keep an eye out for that. And as always, for any news regarding the show or news around the show, go ahead and follow us on our social media pages. So that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.